Welcome everybody, and today I'm really pleased. I've got Grant Hinds with us. Grant is a well-known YouTuber, gamer. He's he's also, it's what I'm finding really interesting about just chatting to him earlier is that he's done things a little bit differently, and I think a lot of us, especially my generation, doesn't often understand. And I know my son's a big follower of yours, Grant, and
All right.
yeah, so he follows your games and everything. So we often don't understand what maybe the gaming world and what's happening out there on the YouTube and all that. And I think it's something we need to come to grips with. So that's why I'm so excited to chat to you. But before we get going, can you just tell us a little bit about where you come from? I know you're a Cape Town chap, but where you're from, and just give a bit of background.
Yeah, so Cape Town, I've lived here most of my life. Um, I studied at AAA to get into advertising. Then never really went into advertising. It was like 2008, so no one was employing. And that kind of like triggered a large impetus to be lateral with the way I approached work, I suppose. Where in order to get employed, we had to think a little differently. Somebody told me a story in varsity once, and it was really inspiring. Of a student, I think it was one of our lecturers, and one of their students had to was applying for quite a sought after job, and they couldn't get airtime with the creative director. Obviously, you hand in your CV, and there's a pile of CVs. So what they did was they took a wallet and they printed out their portfolio. Back then, everything was on print. Printed out their whole portfolio onto business cards, slid it into the card, put a mock-up of the CEO's or creative director's card in the front, and then went to security and said, "Hey, sorry, I found this in the parking lot." Security obviously picks up the wallet, sees it's the creative director, and panics, runs upstairs, hands him the wallet, and the creative director goes, "But that's not my wallet, but it's let me go," and then goes through this person's portfolio, beats the table with all the CVs on it, and gets the job. And it was a very inspiring story because it showed me that it's just people. People that are employing you are also just human beings, and jobs aren't what. There's no necessarily a route to get a job. There's no like journey to get employed or to do a kind of work. Like everybody that in history that's been creative has kind of carved their own way, whether it's they label it as entrepreneurism or whatever. There's always some solution to generate finances and do this something that they're passionate about. So I kind of employed that in 2008. I was waitering, and somebody was sketching on one of the napkins. Really cool sketch. And then I said, "Hey, listen, like I draw comic books too. That's rad." And he was like, "Oh, that's interesting. We're employing." And I used to go to varsity every day by train and do sketches on the way just to kill time. There was no smartphones, or at least like really at that time. And I used to just sketch to eat up the time. So that was like, I don't know, an hour's worth of sketching a day for 3 years. And I went to the job, I went to the interview, and they went through my portfolio for varsity. So my whole AAA portfolio, paged through all the print ads, closed it, looked disappointed. And I worked really hard on that. Like I won a Lurie at varsity. I put a lot of energy into like my work. I really wanted to be. I was going to be a creative director one day, right? That's what they tell you. That's what you should strive for. And they were like, "Do you have any drawings?" And I had my sketchbook because I took the train to the interview. And I was like, "Oh, 1 second," and I pulled out my sketchbook. And they went through this little shabby sketchbook with private like little doodles everywhere. They're like, "Cool, you got the job. Can you start on Monday?" My mom was like suitably upset. But again, that was my first career move into the industry, and it wasn't the traditional route. And fortunately, it happened to me. So that and then from then on, I've not set 5-year plans. I've had 1-year plans, and it's always worked out.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's actually interesting that you say it because chatting to the cartoonist Gavin Thompson the other day in one of my interviews, and he also had similar things. He did his sketches, and he wasn't sure if he was going to get in. And I think it's that little different way of doing things, and we don't always have to go the normal conventional way. But just while we're going, how would you describe yourself now? What is your? I know you're on YouTube. What would you call yourself, or how would you if somebody said to you, what do you do? If you're, an old guy like me says, what do you do for a living?
I would say I'm a content creator, a digital content creator. I think we're living in an era that's post YouTube, in a sense that YouTube is one of many different mediums, and TikTok is a very exciting medium right now. And I think it's a medium that a lot of people should be adopting and learning how to work. In very much the same way, people were critical of YouTube when it started. They were like, oh, these pretty boys talking in front of camera, and because that's what it was back then. It was like a whole bunch of like teenagers creating content, and they're like, oh, we're not that. But as you can see, the platform's matured, and so as a result, we've got genres that that didn't exist back then. We've got unboxings, we've got vlogs, we've got let's plays, we've got and these things are formalized now. They're like these formalized, they're video essays. They're all these formalized things that we consume regularly. Whereas 10 years ago, people in senior management at agencies were scoffing. But we have all these new mediums that are coming up, like TikTok. It's a brand new medium, and genres haven't been formalized yet. So I look at new mediums and I go, okay, cool. If it follows a similar trajectory as YouTube, then things are going to happen on that platform as it matures, and I want to kind of be fidgeting. I kind of want to be with that platform for a while and work out what's going on, and also contribute to its formalization. Like those things happen. It formalizes because of our viewing habits with that platform, or our consumption habits. So with YouTube, unboxings came about because people realized that they could literally watch a video of a product that they haven't bought yet, that they were planning on buying, and seeing if it had the correct cables, if it had the correct, if it had the right specs that they needed, if the, and then the genre formalized, right? So, and the same with vlogs. People want to travel, so there's somebody that's literally traveling on your behalf, and you can go check out what is Bali like. What did that vlogger do in that location that I might want to do there one day? Or dream of doing there one day, because it's also an aspirational thing. And that's where travel vlogs formalized. And it's the same thing with TikTok and Twitch and all these brand new mediums. How are you bringing your knowledge and understanding of media and helping formalize how people consume on that platform? And also getting that information from the way people consume your stuff to go like TikTok, I'm finding it much better not to talk. I used to address a camera all the time, and I'm finding that a lot of people from different language backgrounds are watching TikTok. And as soon as I start talking, I have a drop off. But if I'm demonstrating, then that becomes my viewership increases because people can see what I'm doing, So already that's an interesting way how the way people consume something is informing how I'm creating it, which is interesting.
Do you think this is going to complement traditional media? I mean, we sit down and we watch Netflix, which is a bit of a change from watching, say, DSTV, which was on Monday night you watch this program. Now you can watch it whenever, and now you can watch a YouTube channel any time of the day for a short, quick spurt, or you go onto Twitch where you are live, or you go onto TikTok. Do you think that's going to start taking over from traditional media, or do you think there's going to be a combination of both?
There always is a combination of both, but I mean, we still have radio. Radio's still around, still one of the most consumed medias in the country. But radio has evolved. Radio still needs to keep up with the way people are consuming it. They're lucky that people are still consuming radio because it's still relevant. But at the same time, if you look at spend on those platforms when it comes to advertising spend, it's dropped exponentially because money is being spent in other areas in digital, because a lot of people are on digital. And when data starts dropping in price, then the media that we consume on our phones is going to be way more appealing to a lot of people. It's more dynamic, it's interactive, it's more personal, it's more tailored, it's more catered to the viewer. There's so many other benefits to these brand new mediums that it doesn't necessarily make sense that the older mediums stick around, right? So I would argue, even though Netflix is a new media, that it is the evolution of terrestrial, traditional broadcast TV. So in some ways, it's still traditional, even though maybe advertisers would agencies would still consider it new media. It's still got the genetics of traditional media, but in every single way, if we had like rampant access to data, why would we need broadcast television? Like, I actually want to find out how many people are streaming Cyril's speeches on YouTube as opposed to, connecting their aerial to the TV and watching SABC.
Very difficult for, if you're a media buyer or you're in a company and you're working, and now you're looking at your ad spend, and you're also looking at how if I think of myself, just we were chatting about my business before. So traditionally we supply traditional media magazines. They're pretty much, most of them we've heard about, Associated and Caxton have closed most of their media. So a lot of that's going. So we're having to evolve the way we're doing things, and but it's changing so fast. So TikTok was what? How long's it been going? 6 months, a year? I don't know. And then suddenly there's Twitch, which is I've only just found out about now, and I'm only just getting.
TikTok's been around for like 3 years. It used to be called Musical.ly. I think it's been around since like 2017. But again, it used to just be people mouthing, lip syncing lyrics, Musical.ly, and then the creators were like, wait, hold up, this could be way more. So they've expanded it, changed the name, got rid of the Musical.ly name because that's very specific. And now it's like a very different medium. But anyway, sorry, you were saying.
It's just, I just wonder how people know where to actually, I'm talking to designers and advertisers a lot on the Collaborators channel, and how do they know where to advertise? How do they know what to get into? And, I look at a lot of my clients and they still print brochures. Who reads a brochure? I mean, at the end of the day, if they can be seeing somebody on TikTok showing a ring or showing a drink or a thing, but then it's so quickly new, and then it's out, and then it's the next one, and where do you go? How does one manage?
ROI is something is much better on new media than it is on old media, and the more new media evolves, ROI becomes baked into the metrics. Even on your personal Instagram account, you can see your analytics, and it's literally a button underneath an image, because they understand that people are buying media on Instagram and people want to see real metrics. Magazines suffered from, and people are, ad buyers are really upset with this, but they'll, the times by 4 number, like where a magazine's readership is the number of units sold times by 4. It's a thumbsuck. Broad terrestrial ARs are like 2,000 people in Pretoria with boxes plugged to their TVs multiplied by the amount of people in the country, and that's how they generate who watches what. Like, that's not real data. But real data is not only informing how people are watching, the ROI for a brand, but it's also informing the creators of the platforms. So YouTube's algorithm is constantly changing and being catered towards improving the experience for viewers to make them watch for longer periods of time, so that the content is of a higher quality, suggesting content of a higher quality, and squashing content that has little to no relevance or is just really badly produced out of the way. And that data we've got access to as a media buyer. If you're a media buyer, you've got access to that data as well. So there's a lot of value to new media and a lot of transparency that media buyers of old don't really get. You've got to give it to new media for that.
It was so interesting when we were chatting earlier, and we were chatting about live streaming and all that side of it, and I was complaining, there weren't many people watching a particular live stream, and I think we've traditionally always been, so the magazine says, right, we've got this many readers and this many people who share the magazines, and there's so many read, and actually now it seems to be moving away from volume to the quality of your
100%. There's so many. So here's the thing: the more people that are watching content on different platforms, consuming content on many different mediums, everyone's attention is divided, right? So there are X amount of people watching YouTube. That number might be huge in South Africa. I think the vast majority of our country have consumed YouTube to a degree, if at all, between schools and so on. Or at least they know. I think every human being in South Africa knows of YouTube. But what people consume is, there's just so much more offerings. So the audience numbers are definitely going to drop, right? Because there's no one monopolizing attention anymore. Like attention is way more like segmented. So the quality of your audience becomes way more important then. So if you've got 10,000 people that are regularly consuming your stuff, but those 10,000 people have the capacity to purchase and are purchasing products or investing in the business that you are representing, then a portion of what would traditionally go to prime media, right, or any big media buying outlet will go to you, and a small portion of that huge amount is a lot of money to an individual like myself. You know, whereas I might not be able to get the millions of rands that go to like, you know, above the line advertising across the country. Is it even called above the line anymore? I don't even know. Okay. Yeah, through the lines. It's like if it's like billboards and like urinal stall posters, whatever. I don't know. Like that budget is now being divvied amongst the smaller, like lots of different content creators and creators like yourself and myself. And 10, 20, 30,000 rand from those people goes a long way, you know. And if you can find a handful of those clients who are providing you with a part of that money, and you are providing more value than a toilet stall billboard, that's great, you know. And you as a content creator have got to think laterally about how you're providing that value. Do you now, and you've got to think out of the box here. So you do go like, you guys can have the raw material. I'll give you my raw footage for a promo video. You can have that as a part of the deal. I might only be getting 5,000 views for this video, but if I give you the footage and I do a through the line campaign through the line on digital, so I do some TikToks, Instagrams, and whatever, and you guys can have it, and I report on that stuff. 20,000 rand doesn't seem too bad a spend, you know, and they're getting an extreme amount of money, so the client is happy. Media buyers should be extremely happy if they're an agency that are employing you, and the client should be like, yeah, and like it just creates more work for the media buyer. They don't have the buddy relationship anymore that they have with one entity, you know, or two entities, and selling that stuff and getting kickbacks, because in South Africa you get those media buy percentage backs, which was just it's kind of a blackmail scheme, isn't it?
I think that's still very prevalent in a lot of things that you see. You know, what are they getting out of it? But it's actually very interesting, because just for myself, I've tried to bring on a few, because I'm a great believer with the collaborators and the creatives, that you need to hear from the client side as well, because it's a symbiotic relationship. You know, we need to hear all sides. And I've tried to bring on a few big company people in here, and I've been to chat to and block me, all of them. They just say no, they won't talk on social media. So I think there's quite a big education that needs to go into educating the big corporates that the true value of social media, and if you understand it properly.
But I mean, it's not hard to understand. Like, it's an attention economy, and if your attention is, you know, like if you've got, I mean, like if people aren't watching TV but they're watching the screen in their hand, like what do you need to convince people of? And they're literally like the mediums now with Twitch, with Twitter, with Twitch, with YouTube. They all provide advertising platforms. You can literally run parts of your ad, and you can work out what the ROI is on that directly. You can nearly work out how many sales you directed from that particular ad that was run. You know, there are tools to do that now. And it's silly to think that it's like, I remember pitching something to an old producer of mine. They run a TV studio, and we were pitching a second screen experience with one of the shows, so that when it went off air, you could continue interacting with the show. And the owner of the company said, the internet's a fad. And I was like, what? After this entire pitch, I was really excited. I did it for free as well. It was silly. I did it for free because I believed in what this could mean for the production. And they were like, no, the internet's a fad. It's not worth investing in. And it blew my mind. And now we're living in like this era, like we're zooming because of Corona and all the stuff. Like, clients have less and less money. And there's so much red tape around terrestrial traditional broadcast, and so much money that needs to be generated. But again, if a wine farm has got 50,000 rand to give you to make a podcast, right? It makes a lot of sense to accept that money because that's all they've got. And that's a lot of money to a content creator versus a TV studio going, oh, that's going to pay after tax 2 people's salaries maybe, and with a bit of profit. And then we've got to work out, like, depending on what time of day the show is broadcast, can we put wine on TV? And then if we have that wine company involved in our production, or can we have other wine companies involved? What's the exclusivity like? You've created a system of bureaucracy that's prevented agility, and that those walls like stagnate the amount of money that can be generated. And if you're not agile as any content creator on any platform now, whether it's radio, magazines, or terrestrial TV or online, you will suffer the consequences of not receiving an income. And unfortunately, that's what we've seen with the magazines. Like, those magazines should have been pivoting to digital fast. They should have been looking at having the rights to look what Vogue are doing. They're doing some really exciting stuff on digital. I think Vogue's presence is, the magazine is secondary. Who cares about the magazine? But their brand name is the important thing. Like, they have the name. And if local publishers here started realizing that earlier, we'd have a lot more magazines that are still going. Like, to think that a Cosmopolitan is a magazine is not thinking big enough, right? And you've got to think about, what is Cosmopolitan's magazine, part of that segment of the pie has got to be like 15-20% of the pie. The rest of the income generation is coming from a whole another sphere, and other people are taking that money because you've got your head in the sand. And I'm not saying that I know the team there is amazing. I'm not saying that they were like that at all. It's just tough when there's a system of bureaucracy that exists. And I know a lot of those companies try to get digital rights, but international, because you buy the rights to publish that magazine here, that costs more money to get the digital rights, and in some cases more than the magazine, because it's more valuable than the physical magazine. So it's more complicated than I'm oversimplifying it. But the ethos is true. It's still if you're not a company, if you can't wake up the following morning as a business and you can't be agile to market trends, you never know when we have another lockdown. You never know when people can't come to work in a physical office anymore. Like, are you geared for that? Like, a lot of companies have suffered as a result of like not being able to
hugely. Well, I think it's not only companies. I think it's all of us. Myself. But then again, I think being smaller, it's far easier to adapt. I've adapted things very quickly in the space of the time that we've been down to doing new things, creating content in a different way. I just want to touch on quickly. You also, your big thing is gaming, and can you just explain a little bit of how the gaming works and how that side works to a lot of people? Like myself, my son is big into gaming, and he does that, and he follows you and a number of other people, and they seem that's a massive market out there. How does that sort of work for you?
Okay, so the video games industry is huge. Like in South Africa, it generates billions of rand just in South Africa alone. So just to give you an idea, and film directors, film composers, Hans Zimmer has done like a Call of Duty soundtrack. Not many people know that. Big actors are like headline a lot of these games. Some of the motion capture actors for a lot of these games are celebrities on their own, like Nolan North. He's extremely famous. He's an extremely famous actor, but his prevalence is in a digital world. And a lot of people, I think all of us are gamers to an extent. A lot of people don't like to be called a gamer, but if you've picked up Candy Crush, or if you have, my mom doesn't consider herself a gamer, but she's been playing Super Mario Bros. On her phone because it was available on her phone, and she's finished it. She would never say she's a gamer, but she's finished it. She plays bingo now, not bingo, bridge on Wednesdays, and they play in a voice chat and they play online. That's called online gaming. That's what that is. So
Big on Scrabble.
there we go. So like that's a huge market that a lot of people, especially in South Africa, steer away from, because there's we in South Africa have a very antagonistic attitude towards digital media, towards new games or gaming culture or anything that's digital, and it's a legacy of apartheid. So apartheid left us with this like very untrustworthy attitude towards products that were embargoed, had sanctions on against us. So we didn't get a lot of games consoles. We didn't get a lot of games. Media was seen as like dangerous. I was told that Ninja Turtles was satanistic. We would throw all that terminology was thrown onto us. And as a result, that gene is still there. When I still talk about games on TV, I'm still told it's for kids. It's not for adults. Whereas like the people telling me that are playing a game on their phone. Like, you know what I mean? But they will say, oh no, games. I have this thing. They have the games. The kids have the games. Whereas like that's not true anymore. A lot of games are for adults. A lot of the most prevalent games are becoming more family orientated, and that's actually a discussion for a completely another time. It goes really deep, but it's the way that new media are surfacing content, and they don't like to surface age-restricted content. So any extraordinarily violent game just doesn't get as much earned airtime as a game like Fortnite or Minecraft. So that's like a different discussion for another time. But the gaming sphere is more than just making of games. So you've got people buying games and playing them, but there's a whole bunch of like media around games. Unlike a movie, games aren't just a 2-hour experience that you can forget about. You know, how many movies have you forgotten? You go like, I don't know if I saw that movie or not. You know, games are very time intensive. You're spending 6 to upwards of 200 hours in a world, right? A digital world creation. You get invested in the characters and in the lore of the universe. It's nearly Tolkien-esque, like in its sense. You know, people who read Tolkien don't just read Tolkien. You know what I mean? They will tell you they'll tell you the history of the elves. They'll tell you everything about the orcs. They'll get into it. There's an investment in the Tolkien book, and I think part of it is just because of the amount of thought and like work that goes into a huge like novella the size that you have to like work through over a couple of years. And it's the same with a video game. So what ends up happening is once you finish the game, you end up watching what other people spoke about the game. You read articles about it. You get think pieces. You investigate when the sequel's coming out. You watch other people who did the same thing that you did in the game a lot faster. It's called a quick run, speed run. So there's a lot of content that exists around a game, and that content generates income too. So I'm in that sphere of where I play a lot of games on Twitch. People watch me play those games. I make gaming related content on YouTube, and as a result, the focus of that content is like the audience that I get out of that are people that have either played the games or are interested in potentially purchasing that game, or their friends have like brought them in on it. So eSports, for instance. Esports, I don't know, do you know what eSports is?
It's actually because my son actually, he meant now that you get to eSports, he asked me and he said, can I ask you, he's 19 years old and he plays the games out, and he asked, and his question was, where do you see the gaming going in the future, like eSports and that, compared to your traditional sports and things?
Well, look at this. Look what's happening now with Corona. Esports is like the only sport that's being broadcast.
Formula One.
Yeah, Formula One, that whole Formula One thing where, you know, like the players were driving from home. In fact, it's happening in South Africa as well. There's a race that's happening in Kyalami with our local races, and that's being set up by ATK. I don't know if that's public knowledge yet, so I'm sure by the time this comes out, it will be public knowledge. And that's being broadcast. The NBA players playing like in NBA games, and the Overwatch League is still happening right now. So and so is the international. So Overwatch is a game I play. It's really competitive in nature, and all the players are playing from their houses, and there's a lot of money on the table. In fact, the international, which is a Dota competition, the prize pool is larger than the Tour de France. So that's how much money is on the line. But the Tour de France is not happening this year, I assume. um, I don't think it is. But these guys are still able to play and earn that money from home, and the audience that they're going to be generating is going to be exponential because people are going to be watching this instead of traditional sport. The difference with traditional sport and esports is that esports is the viewership is generally comprised of people who play the game. So it's like golf. Not many people watch golf if they don't play golf, right? Like if you don't play golf, you're not really invested in what's happening, but you'll watch a golf game. It's very similar. And also gaming is way more accessible. So games like Fortnite, where there's a huge tournament and that 16-year-old kid became a millionaire playing in the World Cup, like that game is free. You can download it. You can potentially qualify from your couch at home and compete at an international level. And if that's hard to grasp, I understand there's a bit of legwork. Most of the hurdles that people have to get over is that it's not a physical sport, but we have chess, we've got backgammon, we've got lots of games which are competitive. We've got darts, and in some cases you can win trophies and tournaments. Poker, you win huge amounts of money for playing poker. And there's a level of talent and skill that is required to compete in those. And it's the same with video games. Video games have a level of skill and talent that is required to be competitive. And the more money there is on the line, unfortunately, the more competitive it gets. So the more people that want to get it to the top invest more and more time in improving their ability to perform. And the developers are constantly improving that game and making it more and more competitive. So it's not like golf where the rules are set and kind of set in stone. It's literally every single day, the developers, especially in Overwatch, they're all working from home. They're able to fix and patch the game remotely. The players are able to compete remotely. And the competitive aspect from a viewer's perspective, we can all consume it remotely. So it's working out really well right now for everybody. But again, in the great scheme of content being produced around gaming, esports is only a small amount of that. So on Twitch in 2017, of all the content on Twitch, only 11% of that content was esports. And the vast majority of content on Twitch is gaming related. So gaming as an entertainment is still a much larger spectrum of content generation, or more largely consumed than esports. But I think right now in 2020, more esports is being consumed as a result of just circumstance.
There's so much to absorb here. I mean, it's been absolutely amazing chatting to you, and I think it's something that a lot of us have taken time. I think we are, maybe myself being a different generation, does take a little bit longer but I think it's so important that we understand it. And I think just to round off, if you could just give the guys out there, and I think it's not, I don't want to say the young people, because I think it's all of us, right across to the people who are at the end of their careers. How does one actually understand to get into this space, to get into this? What would you advise people to do, or young kids wanting to get in? Just a last little bit of advice to anybody.
Learn. I know it's a tough thing to hear. Like, I've been in this space for long enough that even now today, I was chatting to one of my regular clients, and I'm already starting to pivot. Being agile and being able to be real with like what's happening with viewership habits and that just requires a little humility from my part. Like, I need to be able to try TikTok, consume TikTok for a while to see what's happening. I need to be able to watch YouTube videos and be humble enough to go, like, if there's a YouTube video, it's like, what is TikTok? Like, maybe I should find that video. Like, just consume, like, work out what you can do to understand that space better. So learn as much as you can. And then also you've got a skill set. This is the thing with people that are near the end of their careers, in inverted commas. There's decades worth of experience that can help formalize and contribute to these mediums, right? Like, people that have been like photographers that are successful on YouTube, or cinematographers that are successful on in new media, are working out ways to take their learnings in a traditional space and be agile enough to apply it to a new medium. What photographic principles? I mean, I'm looking at your shot right now. I can see like how you've lit yourself. It's so much better than the way I've lit myself. Like I can see a little bit of a rim light there. I can see, you've got experience in something that like I need to soak up. I need to learn. And I think that if you learning the medium is less of a hurdle than learning the skill. And you've done the legwork. You've got the skill. You've got the credentials. You're like as a veteran in the space. Now, how do you learn to adapt that to a new medium? It just requires you to go, okay, I'm brand new at this. How do I approach this with an open mind? And not be like my producer from broadcast television and go, it's just a fad. And I think that's just wishful thinking on their side. They want it to be a fad because they want their established throne and their established like expertise to never change. But unfortunately, that's what happens. Like with your kid's job, if like probably like in the job that your son is going to do in 10 years time might not be invented yet. The actual job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
And like just having learning to be lateral in how you solve problems, learning to be agile and give yourself permission, the space to play and move and try things will equip your son more in their future and in your future, because you're not at the end of your career by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, you were like, yeah, the end of the people at the end of their careers. They're not. You're like creative directors and stuff. You've got so much to contribute to your son, like in his search for a career that he doesn't even know yet, and it's a way of thinking. And I always go back to when I was at AAA. We did a module in first year, and it was just called lateral problem solving. It was literally just you've got a grid of 80 pictures. Think of an idea and do that thing 80 times with different tools, and they can't. So if you draw boundaries and you draw like a wall with a pencil, you can't use a pencil or a wall in your next thing, And then eventually you go, this is easy. By the time you reach like 20 or 30, you're like, oh my crap. You've got to literally start thinking about this thing that you've created in a completely different way. And that module helped me way more than like any Photoshop lessons that I took, any practical advice that like tracing typography. Nothing helped me more than my learning to adapt and tackle problems in like an unconventional sense.
Awesome, and it's just such invaluable advice, and I really thank you for coming on and chatting to us. And I just
thank you for having me.
And just ask anybody out there. If you've got any questions, please send them to me, and I'm sure Grant will, if he amongst his busy schedule can find a bit of time, will get back to me with any questions you have, and just let us know your thoughts. And yeah, thanks once again, and we'll chat soon again, guys, on our next interview. But Grant, thank you very much.